Hi, Dia.
You look very pretty.
Thank you, Dia. You look very smart.
Thank you.
Should we start the interview now?
Of course, yeah.
All right. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Let's get started with the questions. How did you feel when you were declared the winner of the conference?
I felt great actually. It really boosted my confidence because I had already won Best Delegate in my committee, and winning the Secretary General's Award really added on to that. And yes, I think it felt amazing. It felt amazing, especially to know that all of the hard work that I put into the MUN led me to go someplace, and it felt great. Thank you for asking.
What was your first experience with Model United Nations and which committee were you in? And what country did you represent?
My first MUN conference was SNAMUN 2020. I was in the African Union and I represented Botswana. We discussed Agenda 63 in the committee, which was extremely interesting.
Good to know, Dia.
You're inaudible, Afreen. I'm afraid I can't hear you.
All right, am I audible now?
Yes, much better.
My next question is what motivates you as a delegate?
I couldn't hear the question clearly.
All right, I'll repeat it. What motivates you as a delegate?
What motivates me as a delegate? A lot of things motivate me as a delegate. First of all, knowing that there is remuneration for all of the effort that you put into MUN is something that definitely motivates me. Secondly, getting to know new people, getting to know people who might be more experienced than you is another thing that I really look forward to in every conference. I think in a virtual conference, it's a little hard to do so, but as and when I attend a live one, meeting new people, getting to know them better, getting to know where they're from, about their perspectives regarding the agenda, and getting to know how efficient they are as delegates is something that I would love to.
Wonderful. Who is your role model in life?
My role model in life is Madame Simone de Beauvoir. She was a revolutionary feminist, and she was also a very great feminist philosopher. And I think I've always really looked up to her in one way or another. That's
That's
amazing,
amazing,
Dia.
Dia. I've never heard of her, but I'll look up into it and we can have a conversation about her sometime. She
Of
sounds
course,
amazing.
amazing. She is amazing.
What is your secret to a successful MUN conference?
My secret to a successful MUN conference is the amount of diplomacy that I exude. It's always important to know how to give the right answers and when to give them. It's also important to take care of the tone which you give the answers in, so that the other person doesn't, the other delegate, in fact, in this case, doesn't feel like you're holding them in a hostile situation, which is extremely important in both Model UN and in the United Nations. Secondly, I'm very fond of documentation. So I believe that although MUN is simply a replica of the United Nations, I try to make my documentation as realistic as it can be. That's my secret.
That's really interesting. Moving on, what do you plan to do in university?
What do I plan on doing in university, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
I'm planning on pursuing law. more particularly international criminal justice.
Wow, that's an amazing career choice.
Thank you.
So, why criminal justice?
It's something that's always intrigued me. Getting to know how the criminal minds work, along with international criminal justice and law, I'm also planning on pursuing criminology. So you can understand it's great to know about how the criminal minds work, how they can manage to fabricate the evidence. So it all appeals to me in a very special manner.
Um, so, speaking about psychology, would you be doing clinical psychology? You could like do research on how criminal minds think and, potentially writing scholarly papers in your career.
Probably, yes. It is something that I plan on doing as an extracurricular in college.
What advice would you give to aspiring delegates?
The advice that I would give to aspiring delegates is to go to the MUN and enjoy. I understand. In fact, I also take a lot of stress during MUN, which is something that I think everybody does. But apart from that, I always remember to have a lot of fun doing what I do in MUN. For example, in my committee, I managed to impeach the premier of the then USSR. So you can imagine it was a lot of fun for me given my political policy being Boris Yeltsin, and it's something that I looked forward to throughout the committee session and before the committee.
How many hours on average do you spend doing MUN research?
In a day, I spend about 5 to 6 hours doing MUN research. That is, if I get to know about the agenda and my portfolio and committee about a week or two before the MUN actually begins.
Do you have a favorite committee?
UNSC is definitely my favorite committee, along with all USSR based historical committees.
Who is your favorite political leader or someone take inspiration from for your diplomacy and speaking skills? It could be a historic leader or someone from current times.
Right. A historic leader, I don't think so, but in current times, there's AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, who has proven to be an exceptional inspiration to me throughout her journey as a senator in in the United States of America. She is a brilliant speaker, I think.
That's wonderful to know, Dia. What are your hobbies outside of MUN?
My hobbies outside of MUN include a lot of aspects that are related to MUN, such as debating, writing, literature, philosophy, a little bit of politics, and psychology.
MUN has a lot to do with your public speaking skills. For the delegates which aren't so, I mean, they don't have such great speaking skills and they need some polishing, what advice would you give?
I think there's always room for improvement, and I believe that I started from somewhere and I learned and I grew. So definitely they can grow as well. And I think MUN is something that teaches them how to polish their public speaking skills. And along with public speaking skills, there's always documentation which comes into effect, and you're marked very effectively in terms of documentation. It also depends on your conversational abilities. So, if you're able to converse with people well, if you're able to understand the questions that they pose and pose good enough questions that affect the committee positively in turn, I think that's something that will really contribute to your MUN experience.
In your MUN journey, did you ever face roadblocks and how did you overcome those challenges?
During my MUN journey, I did face a block somewhere, I think. Last year, for example, when I just started MUN, I was a little lost. I didn't completely understand the concept. I didn't completely understand the procedures, given that it was my first MUN. And I think, as I said earlier, you start from somewhere and you get to another wholly different place. So I think the way I overcame the challenges I faced was through experience and through practice.
Do you have any motto which you live by?
A motto that I live by is play definitely comes first, but work is important when it is time to work. So I believe that there's always room for enjoyment everywhere. For example, even in MUN, there are motions for entertainment where you can just have fun with all of the other delegates, maybe get to know them on a more personal level. But when it's time for the actual committee session, it's good to focus entirely on it and not get deviated from what you're actually discussing in the committee through the entertainment sessions. So I think it's very important to separate the two, but to include the two at the same time.
That's wonderful. When giving speeches, which literary devices or methods do you use? Like, for example, a lot of people say the power of three works for them. What works for you to make your speeches stand out in GSLs or other MUN speeches?
In terms of what makes my speeches stand out and what I think does the work is repetition. For example, if you're trying to make a point, it's important for you to tell them why the point is in order, why the point should be passed. And for that, it's important for you to come up with ideas, to come up with arguments that will link back to your former argument, to your primary argument. So I think I use repetition a lot. Um, Repetition in this case means basically linking back every point that I make to my primary argument. Along with that, I think I use alliterations a lot, more than necessary. So, yes, I think that's it. And it's very important to have a powerful voice when you're speaking, because only when you're confident, when you're speaking in a voice that's um, not shrill but powerful, basically, it becomes very difficult for people to question you because they think, all right, they're speaking confidently, so it's not very likely for their speech to have any factual inaccuracies. So that's something that always works in your favor if you are a good public speaker, if you're a powerful speaker. Afreen, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Has MUN taught you any life lessons?
MUN definitely has taught me a lot of life lessons. When I first started MUN, I used to exert myself a little bit. So I used to take it too seriously, and very often I used to forget to connect with the people that I used to meet during MUN, which is something that I've started focusing more on now. I don't exert myself as much as I did earlier. I form great connections with the people I meet. I take care of my diplomacy during the conference. I make sure not to give any crude replies to delegates so as to not sound rude during the committee session, and I think that's something that everybody should definitely learn from MUN.
Thank you, Dia. It's been wonderful having you here.
It's
Again,
been a
congrats.
pleasure. Thank you
Are
so
there
much.
any final words you would like to convey?
In terms of the final words that I would like to convey to the delegates is to maintain diplomacy and cooperation throughout the conference. It's very important to keep in mind that the words that you say during the committee might affect somebody else in a way that um, possibly degrades their conference for the rest of the committee session or for the rest of the conference, which is why it's extremely important for you to keep the sentiments of everybody else in mind and to form great connections with everybody.
Thank you, Dia, for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
Goodbye, Dia. I wish you luck for your MUN journey, for university, and for your future career.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.